Good morning. Think about this for a moment. The most important words we will ever speak are simple, sturdy words like, I love you, it's a boy, we won, or he's dead. Because these are such huge concepts, it's really better to keep the communication simple and direct. So that's the way I would like to talk to you today. The late Randy Pausch once said, don't tell people how to live their lives, tell them a story. Today I'd like to tell you my story in about 20 minutes. So I believe that this can make a difference by helping you to be that friend that reaches out to someone who needs help. So imagine with me, just for a moment, a beautiful fall afternoon. Life is good. Now imagine as you walk happily through your back door, the phone rings. You answer the phone only to learn that someone you love bought their first shotgun today. And while still in the car, they open the box, load the shell, shove the barrel down their throat and pull the trigger. Why? Why? This is someone that you talked with just last night. Someone that you knew better than anyone in the world. Someone you love more than words can speak. So, as you go limp, sinking to the floor, you realize that your life has changed forever. As a survivor, time is now forever marked as before or after the suicide. Now, if you can imagine with me for a moment, this happening a second time in your life. My name is Gracelyn, and I'm a survivor of suicide, and I do not use survivor loosely. You see, a survivor is referred to someone who's been left to deal with the horrific, unspeakable pain from losing a loved one to suicide. It is the most complicated form of grief. You see, the person that you're grieving is the person that you are angry with. And it's okay to be angry, but it can cause feelings of guilt. You see, there's no drunk driver to blame. There's no cancer to blame. Some of you might be survivors, and if you are, I want to tell you how truly sorry I am. In 1997, after 21 years of marriage and 3 beautiful children, my husband took his life with a .357 Magnum. He was founder and CEO of a large company he had created from the ground up. Because of a lawsuit with competitors, he watched it spiral down financially. He purposefully hid his hopelessness to protect us from worrying. But you see, he felt like a failure. Young people, failure is an event. It is not a person. He did not realize that there was hope from despair. If you ever think that your family will be better off without you, you are so wrong. Don't be dead wrong, like my husband. In 2003, I suffered the ultimate loss. My quiet, shy 19-year-old son, Robert, while living in Raleigh, North Carolina, took his life with a shotgun 1 hour after buying it. He had never owned a gun. He was sitting in his SUV when my sister heard the gunshot from her driveway. He was attending North Carolina State while interning under a 5-star chef. He had his whole life ahead of him. He never used drugs or alcohol and never gave me a minute's trouble. We never saw it coming. Unknowingly, Robert had fallen into a giant crater of grief and depression left by the loss of his dad. I now know the experience of a major transition like college was more than Robert could cope with. Leaving home, family, and friends, and hiding the burden of grief was just one challenge too many. Suicide survival can be kind of like a car wreck. Everyone goes through the impact while in the car, but some walk away and some don't. Robert thought what was good enough for his dad was good enough for him. You see, my husband had unknowingly granted my quiet, shy 19-year-old son, Robert, permission to deal with life the same way that he had, the same way my husband's grandfather had before him. When someone is in extreme turmoil, the removal of a taboo like suicide can be all the permission needed to make what is unthinkable doable. Suicide is the only form of death that immediately predisposes their loved ones to that same form of death. It's called the copycat syndrome. 90% of all suicides, if prevented, will never attempt again. You know, we've all had bad days, but for some, it can unknowingly roll into a clinical depression. Today, I'm willing to be vulnerable with you and share with hope that my story will encourage you to take your mask off. And remember, ask for help if you need it. It's okay to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way. You might be dealing with drugs, alcohol, an eating disorder, cutting, bullying. Be that friend and learn and recognize the signs of depression and suicide. If not for yourself, for someone that you care about. We need to talk about the white elephant in the room that is so often ignored. We need to address the isolation felt by so many young people today. Young people, the more isolated you are, the more vulnerable you will become. In April of 2019, a study among 1,500 young people found that Instagram was the worst ranked social media platform for mental health and well-being. It is associated with high levels of anxiety, depression, bullying, and the fear of missing out. Progress begins in a community of be that friend kinds of people, people committed to help you carry your burden. It's that kind of help that deprives shame of the oxygen that it needs to keep shame alive. Each day in our nation, there are an average of 3,700 attempts by young people in grades 9 through 12. 4 out of 5 individuals considering suicide will give some sort of intention, either verbally or behaviorally. But see, most of us aren't really aware of these facts or even consider them unless the issue of suicide becomes personal. And by that time, it could be too late. It could be a student, a teacher, a sibling, or a parent who just feels like they're having a tough time and found they can't deal with things anymore and considering taking life into their own hands. Facts reveal that this silent epidemic of youth suicide is increasing in the U.S., and it's taking some of our best and our brightest. Suicide ranks as the second leading cause of death for college-age youth and for the ages 12 through 18. In the past 40 years, youth suicide has almost tripled. More teens die to suicide than cancer, heart disease, AIDS, birth defects, pneumonia, influenza, or lung disease combined. You know, I'm grateful for all of you that have never experienced depression, but can't imagine what it's like. Let me help you understand how overwhelming it can be with an example, a visual picture. So on the day of 9/11, of the 3,000 people who went to work at the Twin Towers that horrific morning, certainly none of them could have imagined that within 1 hour they would be jumping 1,000 feet to their death. You see, in that 1 hour, things got so unimaginably hopeless where they were that they were trying to escape the pain. Given an alternative, I'm sure they would have taken it. And that's how it is with hopelessness when it overwhelms a depressed person. I myself have never experienced this. You see, they don't want to die. They just want to escape the pain. And our youth aren't the only ones being impacted. Annually, over 31,000 U.S. lives are reported as being claimed through the self-destroying act of suicide. The actual numbers are probably higher, but due to the secrecy and the shame that shrouds this act, so many go unreported. Let me say this. If you have a vision problem, you go to the doctor for help. So now move 4 inches back to your brain. It's the largest organ in your body. Why is this so different? Depression is treatable. Clearly, not everyone who is depressed is suicidal, but almost everyone who is suicidal is depressed. It's a loss of hope. While some suicides occur without warning, most do not. 75% of all suicidal people give some sort of warning of their intention to a friend or a family member, usually within about a week of their attempt. Teens are so prone to depression. You've got hormonal changes, stress to keep the grades up, and lots of peer pressure. Listen, there's a saying, keep them alive until they're 25. And that is because there is a prefrontal cortex in the front of your brain that doesn't quite develop until around the age of 24, 25. That part of the brain is responsible for two major things. The first thing is understanding the decisions you make today have consequences tomorrow. And there are two kinds of decisions. There are daily decisions and destiny decisions. A daily decision is what you put on to come to school. A destiny decision is getting in the car and driving drunk. The second thing that prefrontal cortex is responsible for is that things can get better tomorrow. An example is that boy or that girl that breaks up with you, that college that you don't get into. And you young people are all on the front lines. You're more likely to talk to each other than to us adults. Teachers are also on the front lines, and they can recognize the signs and react with 3 simple steps, which is sort of like emotional CPR. Number 1, ask them straight up. Have you had thoughts about hurting yourself? Do you have a plan? And if they say yes, the second step is talk to the person. Get them to seek help. Do not leave them alone. Make them promise not to harm themselves until you have found help. Stay with them, call 911 if there's an immediate crisis, or take them to emergency rooms. Their doctor, a responsible family member, teacher, or pastor. Everyone needs to learn the signs, what to do and what not to do. But first, know the signs and remember, depression and suicidal crisis are recognizable and treatable, and it is everybody's business. The symptoms are change in appetite, change in sleep pattern, loss of interest in their usual activities, withdrawal, tired all the time, can't concentrate, declining hygiene and appearance, mood swings, angry outbursts or crying spells, feelings of worthlessness and excessive guilt, or talking about suicide. There are also some red flags: taking unnecessary risks, making funeral arrangements, or giving away their prized possessions. Cutting, that's camouflaging emotional pain with physical pain. Abuse of drugs and alcohol, that's self-medicating to numb everything, and it increases your risk of making poor decisions. Unexplained anger, aggression, or irritability. A family history of depression and suicide, or statements like, my family would be better off without me, or you won't see me tomorrow. Buying a gun, composing a suicide note. A perceived sense of failure, especially for perfectionist or goal-oriented people. Number 1 reason for teens, recent loss of a significant relationship or loved one. I'm going to read that again. The number 1 reason for teens is significant loss of a relationship or loved one. When you pick up on any of the warning signs and fear that someone may take their life, please do take all threats seriously. While you're not responsible to save someone, there are things you can do. Don't forget to be that friend and ask them what's bothering them. Do listen and be compassionate. Don't let them refuse to talk to you. It is a myth that mentioning suicide will give the person the idea. I'm going to repeat that because that is so important. If you don't remember anything else I say today, remember that. It is a myth that mentioning suicide will give the person the idea. You cannot make someone suicidal by talking about it. If they decide to confide in you, don't act shocked or say, are you crazy? That adds to their pain. If they make a cry for help, let them know you hear that cry, let them talk. They will be so relieved that someone cares. Do tell someone, get help. Do not handle this alone. Do not leave them alone. Young people, if they ask you not to tell, that's a deal breaker. If they get mad with you, then they can be mad with you all 99 years that they're alive on this planet. So you will save a life and have to think of it as an emotional CPR. Never be afraid that you will do it wrong or say something wrong. Listen, if I drop dead right here, my chance of survival is going to be much greater if someone does really crummy CPR than do nothing at all and just wait for the EMS to arrive. If you have lost someone to suicide again, I want to tell you how truly sorry I am. It is the worst club in the world to be a member of. I mean, there are feelings of anger and betrayal that are normal. And you may have experienced survivor's guilt, asking yourself what you could have done to stop them. Why do they do this? You see, there's never any one reason why. It's not that last drop of water that makes their glass overflow, but every consecutive drop collectively, one at a time. Hope is the empty glass that we can offer them to pour their full glass into. Remember, no one can make someone choose to live. Ultimately, they're responsible for that choice. If love could keep someone alive, I'd still have my son Robert and his dad. And if you have lost someone from natural causes, give yourself time to heal. Shock is a very common immediate reaction. If you've lost someone to suicide, then you are at risk for depression and it might be a good idea to talk to someone. Please, if you are taking medication for depression, get the proper supervision, especially when you're starting or stopping these meds, and communicate how you're feeling. You know, as survivors, we will always struggle with why. Survivors often feel stigmatized, and friends kind of feel awkward not knowing what to say. Let me reassure you, you don't have to say anything. Just your quiet presence lets them know you care. Remember, you do not have to be a victim of someone else's choice. This one final act doesn't define who they were or who I am. I choose to remember how my loved ones lived and not how they died. Listen, pain is standard equipment in this world, but misery, that's optional. I don't care what your history is, it does not have to dictate your future. That's a choice. The reason I speak for approximately 20 minutes is because during this time that I have been speaking, someone in the U.S. has taken their life. I do this in memory of them. I share with you for two reasons. Number one, I can heal by reaching out to you with hope. Hope that each of you will realize your value. All of you have a special, unique purpose. Unfortunately, we can only connect the dots of life looking backwards when we don't really understand what's happening. We do the best we can with the knowledge at that given time. There might be someone here today, sitting near you, that really need to hear this. You never know what the other guy is dealing with. Remember that. I believe that sometimes things happen to us, so things can happen in us, so things can happen through us. If I had not chosen to move forward with faith after my losses, I wouldn't have met my wonderful husband Peter, or seen our 4 children grow up to be the awesome adults that they have become. I'd have missed the privilege of sharing with so many great young people. And you know, if this helps even one person today, one person, then my purpose has been served. And you know, to that one person, it can be life. The second reason that I share with you is because I'm sure it will be my son Robert's hope that I would take every given opportunity to create awareness concerning suicide. So I leave you with this thought. Will you be that friend? Thank you so much for your time.
Stringing lights on the door. Welcome back to your life. This is worth living for. There's so much left in store. And we don't choose who we get to love, who it is we're gonna lose. Oh, it breaks our hearts in two. But no one really dies if the love remains. 'Cause nothing that dies really goes away. See, grief, it's just like glitter. It's hard to brush away. Bright light and it still shimmers like it was yesterday. And it falls like confetti. All of the memories explode like a hand grenade. And it's sweet and it's bitter. Grief, it's like glitter. Oh, what a mess it makes. What a mess it makes. Past the now and the rage, the what if, and the praying on the hardest days. You accept what you can't change. But no one really dies if the love remains. And nothing that dies really goes away. See, grief, it's just like glitter. It's hard to brush away. Bright light and it still shimmers like it was yesterday. And it falls like confetti. All of the memories explode like a hand grenade. And it's sweet and it's bitter. Grief, it's like glitter. Oh, what a mess it makes. What a mess it makes. I think life's a party, something you should celebrate. Some people leave early and others get to stay. And hearts, they burst like fireworks at the end of the parade. See, grief, it's just like glitter.